I'm Mari Cartel, LifeScript.com, and this is your Hollywood Health Report. Tennis great Pam Shriver had a winning scorecard during her pro career. 21 tournament titles, 112 doubles titles, and 22 Grand Slam titles, many paired with Martina Navratilova. She also grabbed the 1988 Olympic gold medal in doubles. Now an ESPN broadcaster, the mother of three, dropped in at LifeScript to chat with our own Diane Wedner about the effects, good and bad, that tennis has had on her body and life.
Pam, it's lovely to have you here at LifeScript speaking with me today. I'm curious when sometimes people get into a nature-nurture kind of conflict about people who have such great skills like you do. Were you born a tennis player, or did you have to work really hard at it?
Well, I think a little bit of both. My parents loved to play tennis. My grandparents loved to play tennis, so it was certainly the family sport for us. I grew up in the 60s and the 70s when the tennis boom was at its highest, and I loved to play with the ball from a very young age. I developed very good hand-eye coordination skills, and tennis was our family sport. So by the time I was like 9 or 10, little did I know it at the time, but I was already on the pathway to being a professional tennis player.
At what age did you finally figure out that, boy, this is it for me?
I think around about age of 14. My longtime coach came to the house and talked to my parents and said, you all need to be prepared that the life of a professional tennis player seems to be in her future, and he could tell that from the way I was doing in my age group nationals. I was about #2 in the country, and I was already, I'm 6'1" now, and I was already about probably 5'10", 11, and I had an aggressive game built around a powerful serve even at 14. And so that's probably from the moment when, as a family, we started to make some plans that I'd be a professional tennis player.
You look incredibly fit. I mean, I remember when you were at your peak in your professional career, sports career. Have you suffered any lasting sports injuries that you still deal with?
Well, my biggest problem when I was playing, and I still have to manage it well, is my right shoulder. I was, as I said, I'm tall. I relied on my serve a lot. That's how I won. If I served well, I usually won my matches, but it took a toll. So I've had a couple of surgeries, nothing really serious, not like joint replacement or anything, but I have to manage it. And I love to play golf now. I love to play tennis with my kids. And there are times when I'll have an arthritic kind of day. And I find it whether I'm broadcasting and I've been sitting watching a match and then I have to go out to a court that's like, feels like a half a mile away. Sometimes it's important for my low back or my shoulder or whatever to be already warmed up.
You take yoga?
I have done yoga classes. I've found that it hurts my shoulder sometimes, so I have to be open to, doing alternative exercises when it's time to do certain moves like the downward dog or planks, where, it might put some pressure on my shoulder. But Martina Navratilova has been a long-time fan of Pilates and yoga. A lot of tennis players have, and a lot of my good friends have gotten the benefit of just the slowing down in today's speedy life that things like yoga and Pilates can bring, and learning how to breathe. And that's something as an adult I've learned more and more, the importance of your breath, and that when you have to, especially around parenting, when the kids aren't having a good day, you have got to take your time to have deep breaths yourself. It's kind of part of my self-care.
Did you consciously decide to have children later? Was your career a factor?
My career was definitely a factor. There were a number of things. I played tennis until I was in my mid-30s, and then the reason I actually moved from Baltimore to LA is because my first husband, who passed away in '99, he was LA-based. He was an executive with the Walt Disney Company. So he was the reason I moved out here. And then we were together, we were married a short time, but together for 3 years, and then when his cancer came back in 1999, it was very aggressive, and he passed away at the end of '99. And so by that time, I'm now in my late 30s, and it's just the way life took between my tennis and my first husband passing away of cancer, and by the time I got remarried and had kids, suddenly I was 42. And that's just the way my life's path took me.
And do you feel the effects of that being an older mom?
Sure. I would have been fitter had I had kids at 30. I would have been able to run a little faster on the court. There's certain other parts where I think I'm more mature, and I can handle some of the emotional part of having, you know, 3 kids come at you at once after a long school day. I can handle some of it a lot better being in my early 50s now than I would have in my 30s.
Tell me about your kids' charity tennis exhibition.
I played at Wimbledon this year for the first time in years, so it really wasn't a charity event, but it's an invitational doubles event that's very special at Wimbledon each year, and I hadn't played in 12 years. And I did it because I wanted my kids to see me play at Wimbledon.
With whom were you playing?
I was playing with Martina Navratilova against younger retired players. But my kids, we invited, Martina said, yeah, she knows my kids. We invited them out on the court, and they sat beside us on the change of ends. And I actually had a bit of a hamstring strain, and they gave me an injury timeout at one point, and they got us water, and they got us towels, and they held the umbrella. It was hot a couple of the days we played. And then at the end of 2 of the matches, my oldest son, I gave him a racket and we went out and played 3 or 4 minutes of tennis after our match. And it was really beautiful to share a Wimbledon tennis experience with my son. The twins were a little bit young and they haven't played that much, but about 1,000 people on court 3 enjoyed this mother-son hitting opportunity, and it was really special, and I'll remember it forever.
Another thing you obviously will never forget is the death of your sister. She died of breast cancer?
She died. By the time she passed away, she had a mastectomy, but her original primary cancer was cervical cancer, which today, now 20-some years later, since she was diagnosed, is very preventable. And you know,
Pap
yeah.
smears.
Well, she had Pap smears, and that's been around a long, long time. But they actually have a vaccine for both boys and girls at a certain age to prevent certain kinds of cancers. And so it's nice to know that, you know, my daughter will not face the same thing that my sister faced. And, you know, it shows you preventative medicine. Like just actually a couple of weeks ago, by the way, over 50, I had my first colonoscopy. And, you know, I'm a big believer in part of my self-care is doing all the screening and all the testing, mammograms yearly, Pap smears.
Do you have a family history aside from your sister?
No, I don't. I don't of breast cancer. My mom, you know, my grandparents. There's no breast cancer, but you know, I'm certainly aware of how much breast cancer there is. We have, you know, even at my kids' school right now, we have moms that are dealing with certain kinds of cancers, and you know, you just have to. It's a part of our society, and we have to be really, really knowledgeable on how to do as much as we can to prevent it. And I think living a healthy lifestyle is one of the things, knowing your genetics, predispositions, and sometimes it's just can't be helped. It's, you know, it's just fate. It's your fate.
What do you recommend to women who feel that they're just, you know, sagging under the strain of all these responsibilities? What can they do? You've already touched on it, to really help them.
As I take a deep breath, that's one of those things. Well, if our plates get too full, a constant awareness of prioritizing what's really important. Perhaps we can back off some things like our own screen time. You know, it's so easy to kind of get caught up in being at the computer, being at the desk too long, making sure you have a little sliver of the day that's something just enjoyable. And I think as moms and as women, sometimes we try and maybe grab too much and try and control too much, and just realizing that, you know, there really is very little we absolutely have control over in our lives.
Sounds like you learned that lesson.
I have learned it, and sometimes the hard way.
It's a hard lesson to learn.
And I wish I'd known a lot about that when I played my tennis, because I would have won a few more matches, but that's okay.
You did okay. May I just say that?
Thank you.
You did okay. You are an inspiration to women of all ages, and I thank you so much for joining me today and coming here to LifeScript to talk to us.
Diane, thanks for having me.
Our pleasure.
This has been your Hollywood Health Report from LifeScript.com. I'm Mari Cartel.